Ladies and gentlemen, if you can please take your seats. The plenary will begin in just a few moments. Please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2019 National Conference on Ending Homelessness and Capitol Hill Day. Please join me in welcoming the Vice President of Programs and Policy to the stage, Mr. Steve Berg.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 2019 Conference on Ending Homelessness. We have almost 2,000 people here today who've come from all over the country working on this problem in all kinds of different ways, but everyone brought together and unified by the idea that we can end homelessness, and we are ending homelessness right now in 2019. We face new challenges all the time. We've always been a group that thrives on new challenges and on solving new challenges. That's why we've made the progress that we have made, and that's why we have such confidence that we will ultimately meet this goal. So I'm going to be back up here later in this session with a lot of announcements, logistics, important things. But for right now, a couple of things you need to know. One is there's Wi-Fi here. If you want to connect your phones and aren't getting a good cell signal, you look at the Marriott Conference is the Wi-Fi you're looking for, and the password is NAEH 2019. The other thing is social media, since this session is one you're going to want to be tweeting about. There's 2,000 people here, but there are thousands of other people around the country who would love to be here but can't be for one reason or another. And we have found that they really appreciate people who are here tweeting about the conference, about the good things they're learning, and about what people are saying. So we encourage everybody to get on Twitter, use the hashtag NAEH 2019, and let people know what you're thinking, what you're hearing, what's important that you're missing. So, like I said, I'll be back with a bunch more announcements after later in this session. But right now, it is my great pleasure to introduce our leader, the President and CEO of the National Alliance to End Homelessness, and someone who it is a great pleasure to work with, Nan Roman.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to sweltering Washington. Hopefully by tomorrow it's going to be a little nicer here. We're so excited to have you and glad to have you and appreciate so much you being here with us. 37 years ago, in 1982, an organization called the National Citizens Committee for Food and Shelter was formed here in Washington by 5 people who came together around a dining room table to discuss what they might do about the sudden appearance of people sleeping on the streets and on steam grates of our city and other cities. They were people of different political persuasions, but they were all well connected, and they were determined to figure out a way to get people food and shelter while whatever was causing this new phenomenon sorted itself out. If only it had been that simple. They did get a lot, accomplish a lot. They got the Defense Department to give blankets and surplus commissary goods to HHS to distribute. They got the tax law changed to incentivize food companies to donate surpluses. They ran a national advertising campaign on food stamps. As the 80s progressed, in the face of a paralyzing national debate on how many people were homeless, they funded research that arrived at a broadly accepted number. It was 700,000 at the time, 750,000, I think. But no matter what they and other national advocates, including the incredible Maria Foscarinas, who got the McKinney-Vento Act passed during that period, whatever they did, the problem did not diminish. It clearly was not a temporary recession-related issue, as many had originally thought. It kept growing, and families with children had also entered the mix. Around the late 1980s, the committee, working with a broad set of stakeholders, identified housing as the key driver in causing homelessness. And after a robust discussion, they changed the name of the organization to steer toward what they firmly believed was an achievable goal. The new name was the National Alliance to End Homelessness. I reflect upon that now, that goal of ending homelessness. For me, personally, the problem always seemed very solvable. It's not that big a problem in the scope of things, 550,000 people a night. There is no question that the richest country in the world can afford to end homelessness, and we know what to do to end homelessness because housed people are not homeless people. We could end it. For example, since a Section 8 type housing subsidy would end homelessness for almost everyone, we could give every one of those 550,000 people a Section 8 housing subsidy. That would cost about $5 billion a year. As Chairman Maxine Waters points out, the cost of operating a single aircraft carrier is $30 billion a year. The mortgage interest tax deduction, which we have to encourage people to buy homes, costs the country about $66 billion a year. So we have the money to end homelessness. The point being, it always seemed to me that ending homelessness was just a reasonable goal and a doable goal if it was something that we decided as a country that we wanted to do. In the early 2000s and on into the Obama administration, there really was consensus that we should end homelessness and that we could end homelessness, and there was a lot of serious work being done to plan and fund that effort. Not enough work, obviously, but we were moving in the right direction. From 2007 until 2017, the work that you all did to reduce homelessness by 15% between 2007 and 2017, despite the fact that during that period we had a recession and rents were increasing and incomes were stagnant. So it's clear that we know what to do. But now this progress that we had been making has stopped nationally. It stopped beginning with the 2017 pit count, and that continued into 2018, and likely the national number is going to go up in 2019 once we get the whole, the AHAR, the combined national numbers for 2019. That downturn began in the Obama administration and has continued into this administration over a period in which federal funding for our programs increased, and during a period in which you, the homeless programs and systems, were ending homelessness for more people than ever. There are lots of reasons why it's getting harder to end homelessness overall. It's a combination of economics, of race, of politics, of demographics, and there are a lot of caveats. It's important to say that many of your jurisdictions are still reducing the number of homeless people and ending homelessness for various groups. But we're not getting there. I think the fundamental issue is that elected officials and policymakers in this country have not done their jobs, not at the federal level and not at the local level. Over the past decades, they have not supported a decent living wage for people, and they have allowed or even promoted the destruction of millions of units of low-cost housing, clearly with very little intent of replacing it. On the housing side, over these decades, housing has been at the bottom of the list for most members of Congress and not much higher among administrations. And local officials' primary housing strategy is often to complain that the federal government needs to do more, which it definitely does, but while themselves doing very little to use available public land or adjust tax incentives or remove barriers or prioritize funding to create affordable housing. But now it seems that things are shifting again and that there is a real moment of opportunity. Several of the presidential candidates have proposed ambitious housing plans, some to scale, and mayors are looking more seriously at their resources to see where they can make progress, although they're often stymied by local opposition to any change. Congress seems to be on a spending spree. We should take advantage of that while it's still happening. And housing may not be a priority, but it is moving up the list. So we have challenges ahead of us, and we have opportunities ahead of us. How will these affect our work moving forward? How should we frame the problem of homelessness and think about it? And how should we approach solutions to it? Well, first, I think it's important to frame the problem for what it is and what it is not. Homelessness is not the fault of people who are homeless. It is not their choice. Homelessness is not the fault of the homeless assistance system. Both could probably do better, but they're not driving the increases. Homelessness is the result of economic, racial, and demographic factors that our elected and public officials have failed to adequately address, and that has resulted in a critical shortage of housing and in homelessness. It's the reason widespread homelessness first emerged in the 1980s, and it's the reason we're struggling to keep a lid on it today. We need to push our elected and public officials to prioritize these issues so that we don't have any more homeless people. Second, we need to be realistic about what can be achieved and how long it's going to take to achieve it. We can end homelessness. There's not any question about that in my mind. But it's taken a long time to get where we are. Things have gotten worse, more complicated, and it's going to take time to reverse what has happened. It's not going to happen overnight. Having said that, we also can't ignore that homelessness itself is a crisis for every single person who experiences it. And this is particularly true of unsheltered homelessness. We can't just wait while we're make people wait while we're figuring out what to do. There must be urgent action to get everyone under a roof in a decent, supportive, and safe environment and on the path to housing. So what are our next moves? Well, first, I want to congratulate you on the progress you've made on homeless families. Family homelessness has gone down 21% since 2013 nationally. That means that there are 15,000 fewer families homeless tonight than there were 5 years ago. And not only, yes, and not only that, but in the same period, the number of unsheltered families has been cut in half. That still leaves 5,000 families unsheltered, which is 5,000 too many. But it's amazing that the progress that you have made on families, and we need to build on it. What did you do that made that happen? Well, one thing is you did a lot more rapid rehousing. Rapid rehousing grew by more than 400% during that period. So rapid rehousing may not be perfect, but it seems to be having a pretty significant impact on family homelessness. Permanent supportive housing went up 10% during that period. Emergency shelter went up, but transitional housing supply went down. And between the two, there was a net loss of about 8,000 crisis beds. That doesn't sound good, but remember, there was also a decrease in 15,000 homeless families, so probably we're more right-sized nationally than we were, and hopefully locally. And in fact, and this is something we need to attend to, nationally, the homelessness system now has the capacity to help more than 80,000 families at a point in time. That is 20,000 more families that are homeless at a point in time. We have more capacity than we need to help every homeless family. And yet, we don't help every homeless family because there are 5,000 families that are unsheltered every night. So that's a lot of people that are waiting for help when help is there. One thing we should do to build on our successes with homeless families is to figure out why it is that we're not doing better if we have a surplus of supply in our system. Admittedly, having a surplus at a point in time doesn't necessarily mean that we're not using our resources efficiently. You can't just obviously move units or money around on a nightly basis from one state that has a bed one night to another state that needs a bed another night. The units of assistance are fixed, and they may not always exactly match up with the problem, with the need, the demand. But there could be other reasons why beds are empty that have to do with policy and practice and things that could be changed to help more families. Maybe your family programs have barriers and the families end up on the street because they're not admitted or they're removed from the programs even though they're empty beds. Maybe families won't come into programs because they don't like the rules or requirements leaving you with empty beds. Maybe your local supply of beds isn't coordinated, so people don't know that the beds are available and they go empty even though there's need. It's definitely something worth looking at. 40 states have more temporary beds than they have homeless families, and almost all of them, 35 of those 40 states, have unsheltered families. So I would say it's worth looking at your data to see if you can allocate your resources more effectively. We could do better. You know what to do to end family homelessness, obviously, since you've reduced it: diversion, shelter, help with self-resolution, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, other housing subsidies, and link to services, including employment. That works, and if we use our resources at peak efficiency, it could work faster and better. We're also moving in a good direction on homeless youth. We're learning a lot through the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program, YHDP, at HUD. Those grants are helping communities plan systems to end youth homelessness and involving young people at every juncture. What are some of the things that communities are learning about how to end youth homelessness? Well, I don't think there's much data yet on the YHDP outcomes. There are some interesting themes that HUD has identified that run through many of the jurisdictions that are doing the work, both rural and urban. There's the critical importance of authentic youth voices and youth leadership in the process of doing the planning, the need to use data to make decisions, the importance but the difficulty of genuine partnership with systems players like child welfare and juvenile justice, the necessity to look much more closely at LGBTQ and racial disparities, and the use of evidence-based practices. Homeless programs across all the populations have been improving their outcomes by creating systems, which you're all familiar with. The process rationalizes the use of funds, and it generally makes better use of scarce resources. Youth programs have not always been integrated into these local systems, but YHDP is giving them a chance to take that same systems approach. I expect that as youth programs do this, we're going to see similar successes for homeless youth that we've seen in the overall system shift for homeless populations more generally. And this is another area where I think we have some pretty clear marching orders. And of course, a third area where you know what to do and are getting results is among veterans, where the veteran homelessness problem has been cut in half. Everyone says ending veteran homelessness shows that this is a problem that can be solved, that it can be done. I think it shows that two things are needed if we're going to end homelessness overall or for any subpopulation. The first thing is that we need to have the right strategies. The Veteran Homeless Programs has a fully stocked toolkit of strategies: prevention and now diversion, temporary crisis housing, permanent housing via rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing, and services, including treatment and employment. So one thing you need to solve the problem is to have the right set of solutions. But the other thing you need is resources to scale. Just being smarter and more efficient is definitely good. It helps us to get the most out of every penny. But we don't typically get enough pennies to help everybody who needs that help. The veteran experience shows that when we get enough resources, we can solve a problem. And on the, yes, Not for me, but. And on a per capita basis, homeless veterans get between 5 and 6 times the amount of resources of people who are not veterans but are homeless. So it's much better resourced. So on families, youth, and veterans, and of course chronically homeless people, I think we know where we're going. You know where you're going. We just need to continue to ramp up what works, lower barriers, check our efficiency, and get more money. There is one area where we don't have the clearest vision about strategies, nor the dedication of resources, nor it really seems the will, and that is for individual adults who aren't veterans or chronically homeless. They sort of get whatever is left over after everyone else has been helped. And it's a problem in communities across the country, not the least because individuals are the biggest subpopulation. There are 372,000 homeless individual adults, 2/3 of everyone who is homeless. About 250,000 of them are neither veterans nor chronically homeless. Individuals fall into groupings around age, gender, race, disability status, and geography, and those groupings can be useful when thinking about how to help them. In terms of age, 10% of individuals are under 25 and about 1/3 are over 50. It's important to remember that homeless people become elderly at around 50 or 55 years old. So we have younger and older people to consider. On gender, most individuals experiencing homelessness are male, but nearly 30% are female, and that is growing slightly. In most places, there is little or no programming or protections for homeless women on their own. There are also people who are LGBTQ and others for whom we don't have good data about their percentage of the population, but we do know they're underserved and can be especially vulnerable. On the racial groupings, the majority of homeless individuals identify as white, 54%. Whites are underrepresented in the homeless population. African American individuals are overrepresented at 35% of the homeless individual population, but only 13% of the general population. Native Americans, Alaska Natives, Native Hawaiians, and Hispanics and Latinx people are also overrepresented in the individual population. We must push back against the systems and the racism that caused these minority groups to become disproportionately homeless. And we must be rigorous in examining our own systems and programs to make sure that we are achieving equity. You'll be hearing much more about this throughout the conference, including a rundown on some of the things the Alliance is doing from my colleague Chandra Crawford, I think tomorrow. Disability status is another important grouping. As many as 44% of homeless individuals are disabled versus only 19% of the US population. Some of this disability is the cause of homelessness, and some of it is the result of being homeless. Finally, homeless individuals are not evenly distributed across the country, although it is a problem in every state. More than half of homeless individuals live in just 4 states, Texas, Florida, New York, and California. California alone has 30% of all homeless individuals and nearly half of all unsheltered people. It has about 12% of the US population, so very disproportionate. All of this is mostly information from HMIS, so we may be missing a lot of the nearly half of homeless individuals who are unsheltered. E&D Young of Org Code very generously provided the Alliance, USICH, and HUD with tens of thousands of records on unsheltered and sheltered people recently, and they were analyzed by California Policy Lab, and there are going to be some presentations about this. This has given us some new insights into unsheltered homelessness among individuals. I'm not going to go into details, but they are much more disabled than sheltered people. They score twice as high on the VI-SPDAT. They're 25 times more likely than sheltered people to be trimorbid. And also half of them reported that health issues helped to cause their homelessness. So they weren't all, some of them had health issues as they came into homelessness. It wasn't the unsheltered homelessness that caused it. They're homeless for a very long time. Nearly half have not had a stable home for 3 years or more. They have little contact, apparently, with the homelessness system, many of them. I should also note that unsheltered women are much worse off than unsheltered men across a host of dimensions, especially health. So unsheltered homelessness is an urgent problem, and it is largely a problem among individuals, and it needs to be addressed immediately. Back to individuals overall, actually, what individuals need probably does not seem to be very different from what other populations need. It's just that we've never really established a system that provides those things to individuals. They need meaningful outreach if they're unsheltered. They need diversion, decent low-barrier housing-focused shelter that allow pets, partners, and possessions. They need help with self-resolution. They need rapid rehousing. Almost none of the rapid rehousing increase has gone to individuals. They need permanent supportive housing, and they need services, especially including help getting a job, because very few of them are going to get any help to pay for housing, pay the rent. In most places, the most they really get is shelter and maybe permanent supportive housing. There are some unanswered questions, though, about homelessness among individuals that I think we need to look at. What are the best strategies for dealing with encampments? Why do encampments arise some places and not other places? What's the best way to ramp up the supply of shelter where there isn't enough? And how do you balance an investment in shelter versus the investment we need in housing? While coordinated assessment and entry help get the most vulnerable people into housing, the result is that most individuals are really not being helped at all. How do we balance local systems so that there's some kind of help for everyone who becomes homeless? People of different races and genders have different trajectories into and experiences of homelessness. What are those trajectories, and how do we tailor assistance to address them, their special needs, their individual needs? And what kinds of programming is needed for homeless women and unsheltered women? And what is the best thing to do about people living in vehicles? And there are many other questions, I'm sure, but those are some of the ones that I think we don't have such clear answers to. A big issue that is coming our way also has to do with the individuals as part of the aging population. Dr. Dennis Colhane and his colleagues have recently completed a study on how many homeless people are going to be older and have health needs and what that's going to cost. The sobering findings are that the population of older homeless people is going to double in the next 5 years and triple by 2030. This will be accompanied by significantly higher health costs for that population. The data show that housing in particular can significantly reduce health costs for this group. These are some of the problems I think that issues we're going to be facing as we go forward. We have some much bigger problems to face as well. One is the very heavy burden of racial disproportionality and inequity that we see in homelessness and what it is that we should do about that. These past 10 days or so of the national discourse on race and nationality have been very difficult days. They have hearkened back to a time that we should never forget, but we may have hoped that we had begun to move beyond. We all have a role in condemning racist and xenophobic political rhetoric, not just through our own rhetorical responses, but also through our actions. I think those of us here in this room are in that sense lucky, because our work gives us the opportunity to show our feelings and our convictions and our values through our actions and through our work. It's not a simple task to address racism in our own homelessness world, to ensure that the unfairly high percentage of homeless people are African American, Native American, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian, Hispanic, and Latinx get off the street, get out of shelter, get into housing, and get the help they need to never be homeless again. But it's hard to hear what we've been hearing, I think, in the past 10 days and feel optimistic about making progress on that, or even to concentrate on it, given the effects that it has on our own lives and on people that we know. But it's what we have to do, and it's what we are blessed to have the opportunity to do. We need to look at ourselves, at our own programs and our systems, and make certain that they're not causing or reinforcing racial disparities. We must look at the systems that disproportionately send African Americans, Hispanics, and other people of color into homelessness and work with them to stop that flow. We must look within ourselves and our organizations to make sure that we're holding ourselves to the standards of equity, fairness, and justice that we expect from others. The Alliance is committed to do that, and we're trying to do that, and I know that all of you are too. And I look forward to learning from you during this conference and beyond, of course, about what you're finding and what you're doing. And I urge you not to be overwhelmed by the ugliness of the moment, but to look to the beautiful work that you're doing every day, to see what can happen when you focus on love and not on hate. A final challenge we face at the moment is some of the actions of the administration to undermine core values and strategies that have made us able to reduce homelessness and to replace those with ideological approaches that are not based on evidence. I'm speaking about the undercutting of Housing First and the Equal Access Rule. Briefly, as you know, Housing First is an evidence-based practice that gets people experiencing homelessness a home and then helps them deal with their problems through voluntary services. The new HUD Homeless NOFA allows the low barrier entry, but it also allows programs to require service participation once people are housed. In my personal experience and from what I have learned from consumers, services generally work best when people want them, as opposed to being forced to participate in them. In any case, our recommendation is that you maintain the focus on Housing First, since it is effective in reducing homelessness. If there is a great program with mandatory services or participation, that's fine in your community, but you will need to have both approaches at a minimum. And don't forget that you still have to achieve outcomes, and Housing First is proven to accomplish that. HUD's Equal Access Rule requires that HUD-funded programs give access to people regardless of their marital status or sexual preference. It is definitely in effect. It has not gone away, so that is still a rule that we have to follow and should follow and want to follow. But the Office of Management and Budget of the administration has indicated that it plans to change the rule. However, there's no public timetable for that and no suggestion of what they're planning to do. HUD had posted excellent guidance for homeless programs on how to administer parts of the Equal Access Rule, particularly with respect to transgender people. But that was taken off the HUD website at the beginning of the administration. Nevertheless, it is available on our website and probably lots of other people's websites. And you will still find that information useful, and you should use it. So again, ignore the man behind the curtain and just keep doing the great work you're doing. So, in closing, there is no question that we're at a little bit of a tough moment. The affordable housing problem is getting worse most places, and the number of communities that are managing to reduce homelessness is going down a bit. The federal environment could be better, but on the other hand, we have been getting more money. That's good. And what you are doing is working. And if you double down on the best practices, look for ways to speed things up, to make sure you're coordinated. It's not the most exciting thing, but it really does make a difference in using the resources. Coordinate better. Really dig down on unsheltered homelessness if it's an issue. If we do those things, we still have space to do better and drive the numbers down. As for the Alliance, we'll do our part to get you federal money for that, but we need your help on that too. Rashida and Callie on our team have worked hard with all of you on Capitol Hill Day. As a result, we have state captains. I have to say, it says here that we have them for 50 states. but I understand that one state, which shall not be named, has dropped out, state captain, so we only have 49. It's a big disappointment. I'm just going to say we had it for 50 yesterday for the first time. And half of the states have co-captains with lived experience joining in that as well. So give yourselves a hand. And we need all of you to be going up to the Hill and telling your elected officials what it is that you need to end homelessness in your communities. The meetings are arranged, it's all set up, so you just need to stop by at the Advocacy Hub and they will link you up. And I think Steve's going to talk a little bit more about this too. And one other thing that I wanted to ask you to do, it's very, very important, and that is to register your residents and clients to vote. It's fine to say that we should all be advised in what we're doing and involve people with lived experience, but we're not walking the walk if we're not helping them get registered to vote. Homeless people need to vote, and courts have consistently upheld their right to be registered to vote. Thanks to our partners at the National Coalition for the Homeless, we have manuals on the advocacy table that tell you what to do to register consumers to vote. And the National Coalition also has a table here, and they have manuals on their table too. There are links to it on the resource page. So if you have questions, grab those, and if you still have questions, call the Coalition or call the Alliance, and we'll be glad to help with that. This conference is for you, so don't be a passive participant in it. If you're not hearing what you want to hear, ask questions, share your own examples. If you don't like a workshop, there are lots of other workshops, so just leave and go to a different one where you are hearing what you want. We know that it takes a lot for you all to get here. It means so much to us to have you here. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you for all you're doing. And I hope that you will go forward and enjoy the conference. Thanks.
All right, great, thank you. One more round of applause for Nan Rowan, please. All right, I said I'd have announcements. Here they are. I gotta go quick. Again, social media, Twitter, let everybody in the country know what you're learning at this conference. The hashtag NAEH2019 is how you link it to this conference. Tonight is the awards recognition. It'll be in the Marriott Ballroom. Starts at 5 o'clock with a cocktail hour. We're honoring Palm Beach County, Florida for their work on youth homelessness. It's also, yeah, great, good. And it's a great chance to meet up with old friends, make new friends, so please join us this evening. There's changes in the schedule for tomorrow. Please, if you have your conference agenda at a glance in your hand, take it out, open it up. Here's the changes. They're on the screen too. 3.04, 4.04, 5.04, and 6.04 will now be in the Delaware room. 3.06 is in Washington 3. 4.09 is in Roosevelt 5. 5.05 is in Maryland AB, and 6.09 is in Roosevelt 5. The app, if you haven't downloaded the conference app, you should download the conference app. The app has been updated, so all the room numbers in the app are accurate. It's the written piece of paper that there's the problem with paper. You can't change it on demand. Okay, Nan mentioned advocacy. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in Washington, D.C. in the policy world right now, but there is money available to spend on new things. There's a budget deal that appears to be in the offing that's going to make more money available for annual spending, not only for defense, but also for non-defense programs, including those programs administered by HUD, like the homeless assistance programs. Please drop, if you aren't already signed up to participate in congressional visits and you think you might want to, please stop by the Advocacy Hub right across from registration. This is a very important year. It's a year we can manage to do some things, and we need the help. So please stop by the Advocacy Hub. There will be buses up to the Hill. The first bus will leave on Wednesday at 12:15 p.m. So transportation is easy to get to because this hotel is a little further from the Hill than the one we were at a couple of years ago. Okay, and then the final announcement. The Alliance has developed several new important tools, data visualization tools that are available on our website that people, I think, have found very useful in helping explain to people, helping advocate, helping people in their communities understand what homelessness is all about. The Demographic Data Project is a series of briefs and visualizations showing who's homeless and how many there are. The Racial Equity Network Toolkit is a kit, again, of data visualization tools that help people see what these racial disparities in homelessness really are, how prevalent they are, and what we can do about it. There's new resources on family homelessness, like Nan talked about, data visualization where you can really see what's happening in your state with the family population. All these resources are available. You can explore them in iPads that are set up at the registration desk on the little stand. So if you haven't taken a look at some of that stuff, it's powerful ways for people to understand what these numbers are all about. So with that, I would reiterate what Nan said. This is your conference. Please, anyone with these little name badges on them are our Alliance staff. If you have ideas for things you want to see or questions to ask, please contact any of us. And the first round of workshops starts at 2 o'clock. See you there.